feel stuck? Are you in your 20s? Well, come and watch the rest of this video to become unstuck. Here's 5 things I wish I knew when I was 20. Number 1, don't be afraid to take risks. Life's too short not to. So when I was in my early 20s, when I was just getting out of college, I got my full-time big girl job, and I realized like I was getting all the checkbox marked off, like in society, you know, they're like, go to college, get a big girl job, like check, got that. And society says, okay, you check these things off, boom, you become happy. And I'm like, oh, that's all I need to do is check off those things, right? Yeah, that's not how life works. So I was in this corporate job and I did not like it. I was not feeling fulfilled, not very like happy personally. I just wasn't, like, everything was fine and okay, but that's all it was fine and okay. It wasn't anything like that. I never like woke up and like, let's sell insurance today. Like every day was just mundane. It was the same thing over and over and over again. And at the time, my now husband, but boyfriend at the time, was starting up a side hustle. And I would help him out with the sales aspect of it. And it got to a point where he was able to go full-time on the side hustle. So proud of him, so excited. But here I am going to this corporate job every single day, being fine and okay, and paying my bills fine and okay, but coming home feeling like FOMO, I guess, missing out on more emotion. Like being fine and okay is fine and okay, but I'm like, I want to experience more emotion. And how do you do that? You have to do more things. You have to experience, you have to put yourself out there. And that's this number 1 is don't be afraid to take risks. It took me an entire year before I had the guts and the strategy. I did it strategically also. I do not sponsor, unstrategic leaps of faith into your side hustle if there's not a strategy behind it. Like it literally took me an entire year to quit the job that I've been not necessarily dreading. Like I enjoyed it. I love my boss. I enjoyed my coworkers. It just wasn't fulfilling me. It just wasn't awesome. It was fine. It was okay. So a year later, after I've been muddling up my brain about do I quit, do I not quit, I quit. So I quit my first and last corporate job to go full-time on our business together, Hardesty Imaging. Link in the description below. If I didn't take that risk, if I didn't listen to my gut and say, I want to do what I wanted to do, then honestly, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to share my message with so many other people. I think we do a disservice when we don't do the things that we're afraid of, because generally what's on the other side of that fear, of that being afraid, is everything that you're meant to achieve. Everything that's for you, everything that you dream and desire is just right on the other side of being afraid. So I think that is number 1, so important. Don't be afraid to take risks. Number 2, learn the power of budgeting and saving. So I would consider myself to be pretty financially literate. Growing up, my dad, like he's a certified financial planner. So growing up, like I would create lemonade stands or do car washes around the neighborhood, or like honestly anything to make a few dollars. I started mowing lawns and shoveling snow. Like I was that girl. And my dad would always kind of talk through and say, okay, here's how to save money, spend money. Here's essentially how to use it as a tool, which has been super, super helpful. And then I grew up, went to college, and I learned a thing called credit cards. So when I was in college, I was like, you know what? I need to get a credit card to start building up my credit, because I knew that was very important. Not in a sense of like, oh my gosh, I need to have a good credit, but being in today's society, you do need to have credit in order to borrow, in order to buy things, even like insurance, or get approved for a home or a rental property or a car loan or anything else like that. Credit is super important. So I took that in a different capacity and said, you know what? I should probably get 3 credit cards. So technically you can do that. There's nothing against credit cards. When I went to JCPenney and they said, hey, you could save 20% if you get a credit card, I'm like, I would love to save 20%. So let's get that credit card. And then when you go shopping and you're out and about and you're like, you know what? I need this. I need this. Just put on my credit card. You know, you'd get statements in the mail and say, a couple $1,000. That's a lot of needs, a lot of things there. Credit cards are a very useful tool. And if not used wisely, they can get you into some trouble. So I learned, hey, I'm gonna take this as some awareness, some self-reflection, and pause. I'm not gonna use credit cards for a while. And I was able to pay off that credit card balance. But because of that experience, I actually learned a lot about credit cards. And when I actually got a new credit card, they offered a 0% balance transfer for a year. So I was actually able to transfer my debt from one credit card into another for 0% interest. So just by even having that knowledge alone, I was able to save, I don't know, probably hundreds of dollars in interest just by switching to that. So that's a tip, actually, if it's open to you. As you become older, or I don't really like the word older, but maybe more experienced. I think age is just a number and it doesn't necessarily tell you much about a person, but more experience. Like this year, for example, I actually got out a new credit card for Frontier because we've been traveling a little bit more, and I was able to get like 50,000 miles, which equaled, I don't know, quite a handful of free trips through the US to travel. I was like, this is a good idea. So now I use that card just for traveling and pay it off, and I get some extra, I get miles and I get some perks and that kind of stuff. So credit cards can be actually a very useful tool. What's important is making sure that you are keeping up with it. So if you have 5 credit cards, keep it up. What are your balances on each? What are your interest rates on each? What's your minimum payments on them? If you're using credit cards as like your normal form of payment, technically there's nothing wrong with that. But my personal suggestion, or rather opinion, is not to use credit cards as debit cards. Like, use your credit cards on things that are like bigger purchases or maybe like out of the blue things, but don't use it as a buffer to buy things that you want in that moment. It's like if you need to just wait a few more months to purchase something larger, maybe that's the right financial choice for you. At the end of the day, I'm not a financial advisor. These are just my opinions from my experience. So in closing, learning budgeting and saving has been huge in my early 20s. It's really helped me build a foundation for years to come. Number 3, don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. A huge example of this was about 3-4 years ago. I went to my fiance, Ian, which is my now husband. I went to him, and this was in the middle of like me wanting to quit my corporate job, but not really knowing what to do and feeling like there's something more for me, but not knowing what that was. All these feelings. And I went to Ian and I said, Ian, and this was a big deal for me. I'm like, Ian, I think I need to see a therapist. And then I went on and on about like all the things I'm feeling and thinking, and like I don't feel connected with my job. Like there's something more out there for me. I don't know what it was. Like I'm not necessarily depressed, but I'm not satisfied. And it's just this like raw, open wound emotion where you can never you can't put a Band-Aid on it. Like you can do it for like a hot second, but like it's still that open wound, and you just need to you need to satisfy it. You need to fulfill it with whatever's fulfilling for you. So Ian looks at me, God bless him. He looks at me and says, well, have you ever considered just hiring a life coach? And I'm like, First of all, what the heck's a life coach? Second of all, where did you get this wisdom? Like, where did this come from? So from that point forward, I actually interviewed 5 different life coaches, and I found one, and she was able to help propel me to that next level of my life, of what my soul was meant to do in the world. So I say this as a huge thing of like, there's so many times, especially in our 20s, that we're like, I need to figure things out on my own. I need to, I need to find my voice and my wisdom and all the things. But we're really doing a disservice when we aren't just asking for help. Whether it's actually seeing a therapist, seeing a life coach, maybe it's a nutritionist or a fitness coach, whatever that looks like for you, we're literally just holding back that time. Like, we're wasting our time. So for example, you can look at a piece of paper, 1 + 1. Oh God, what the hell is that? Well, I don't know how to do addition. We could sit there for 5 years trying to figure out that problem. Or you could go right next door, ask a tutor, hey tutor, could you coach me on, teach me on this problem? And they're like, oh yeah, let's work on addition for a week's time and let's see what you got going on. And look at that. After a week's time, you now know how to add. Let there be rejoicing, guys. You now have a skill. And it only took you 1 week versus over here, it would have taken you 5 years. So this is like a story, metaphorically speaking, of like, it's so true though. Out in the world, I could easily be out there suffering in a sense of like mentally, of feeling this rawness, this urge to be connected to something that ended up just being myself. But without help, I wouldn't have gotten there. So asking for help helps. Who would have thought? All right, guys, number 4, this is a huge one. Learn to be comfortable being alone. So when I first became a full-time entrepreneur, there's just this like undefined feeling as an entrepreneur, especially the first one in your generations, in your family or friends group, that like you just instantly feel alone because you're not able to go out and connect and say, hey, you know what? I'm having this really tough time connecting with my clients. What are some ways you think about? They're not able to have that conversation with you. Or, hey, did you know that this is actually a business expense? How cool is that? Or like, what the hell's a business expense? So whether you're trying to like go to family and friends and saying, I'm really having this tough time with this client, I don't necessarily know how to address this. And they're like, tell them to F off. It's like, can't really do that, Or then over here, if you're saying, oh my God, this meal is a business expense. How cool is that, guys? And they're like, don't know what a business expense is, but congratulations. It's just essentially like this feeling of like being alone. Like you're not able to connect and relate to people you once were able to, which definitely creates some space between you. And when you are the first entrepreneur in your family or friend groups or in your generation, whatever that looks like for you, it can be even more lonely when those people that you were connected to no longer support what you're doing. They're against you starting that side hustle or that business, or against you spending time trying to write a book, or whatever that looks like for you. But there's just this sense of not being connected, not feeling like you're able to be yourself around the people that you used to feel that way towards. So learning to be comfortable with being alone has been huge for me. And not necessarily alone in the standpoint of like I'm the only person in the room, but rather this feeling of I am the only person in the room, even if there's 50 other people in the room, but having that feeling, being comfortable with that, feeling okay with having the uniqueness to you and not having to resonate or connect with other people in order to feel happy inside, in order to feel connected to yourself inside. That's been huge for me. You're always going to get a lot of advice from other people because other people think they know what's best for you. Use that as an opportunity to connect with yourself. So when someone's giving you a suggestion or advice, or maybe they're pushing one on you, cough, cough, parents, use that as an opportunity to connect with you. Ask yourself, this doesn't necessarily feel right to me, but what could I learn from this? If someone's giving you advice, where is the truth in this? Is there something that I could learn from this? That's going to be a huge mindset shift to essentially get you out of that conditioned mindset that you need to always be searching externally for that feeling of connection, that feeling of wholesome and not being alone. So to wrap up number 4, it's okay to be alone. It's okay to have that feeling of loneliness, but connect with yourself and dive deeper into that feeling. And where's this coming from? Why am I feeling this feeling? And you might be surprised to see what you learn. And the last one on our list, number 5, is network and build relationships. A great example of this is when I started our first business and I was in charge of marketing, in charge of sales, and I went to a networking group. You had to pay to be in that networking group. You went every week and you would do a presentation, you did your 30-second commercial, and you'd pass referrals around. The thing with this first networking group that I joined is that I was the only woman in the room. And while in the beginning that never really bothered me, as I continued on for about a year in that networking group, I started growing with my life coach, and the perspectives that I was having, I realized that they were in such more closed mindsets. That's okay. Other people have different mindsets and different perspectives. I didn't feel comfortable being in that environment anymore, from a standpoint of I wanted to surround myself with people that were more like me, that wanted to learn new things and try different experiences and were open to something outside of a 9-to-5 job. So that is when I went to a all women's networking group. And I didn't really think anything was going to be any different really, except when I went in that networking group and we sat down and, everyone's interacting with each other. And I'm like, oh my God, women do this too? It was this huge perspective shift for me, realizing that there are some masculine women out there that are just getting shit done and still connecting and networking, and they're bringing in that feminine energy, and they're still being nice people, and they're still talking about their family and their kids and the problems, as well as maybe business struggles or business achievements, or hey, look at me, I just got this thing, whatever that is. But I realized in that moment, that is what I felt more connected with. And from there, because I was able to connect with those people on a deeper level, I then built deeper relationships with them. So I would get more referrals and more leads and just have a better relationship with those clients too, because they were from those referrals and those leads. Now I have actually my own networking group of just women, but I've surrounded myself with mostly just women entrepreneurs. So we're able to dive deeper on entrepreneurial problems that so many women face today, especially young women. Most of the women in my networking group are in their younger 30s, older 20s. So being in this networking group, building these relationships, I've gotten so many great friends out of this. I'm able to call them on work and business problems as well as personal problems too. So diving deeper into relationships with people has been astronomically huge for me, and just my personal happiness too. Feeling connected with others and having a community of people that I feel safe to have a conversation with has been astronomical for me in just my continuing growth personally and professionally. You become a better business owner and honestly a better human when you gain more perspective from outside opinions and outside suggestions. Not necessarily saying you need to take them on as your own and accept them and agree with them, but hearing other perspectives, building your relationships, your networking opportunities, That is huge. So to wrap out number 5, building a deeper relationship with others and feeling that you have that sense of community is absolutely huge, especially in my younger 20s. I do wish that I knew that. I hope you guys learned a few things here by watching this video. Let me know in the comments below which number you resonated the most with, or which one you feel you need to start taking some more practice in. Also, let me know what topics you want to hear more of. I'm open to discussing any topic that you guys want to chat more about. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you have a fabulous week, and we'll catch you guys later. See you guys.